Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving yourself this moment, for your willingness to look within and question what you believed to be true for so long. That's no small thing, so really feel it. Truly feel it. You've already started to heal. Today we're going to talk about something deep, yet so simple, that the untrained mind often overlooks it. Questioning our thoughts as a path to end suffering. And this isn't just pretty philosophy or greeting card spirituality. This is practical, direct, and urgent. Because if you've ever felt stuck, anxious, resentful, or paralyzed, then this conversation is for you. Look, A Course in Miracles says, "I am never upset for the reason I think." What does this mean? That we often believe we suffer because of what's happening outside of us, because of what someone said, what didn't happen, what we lost. But in reality, we don't suffer because of the facts. We suffer because of the interpretation we give them. Let me give you a real example. Once I was waiting for an important phone call. It didn't come. And in seconds, my mind was already shouting, "They don't care about you. They're probably ignoring you. You must have done something wrong." Sound familiar? A neutral event, a missed call, turned into total anguish because of my unquestioned thoughts. And that's what we do all the time. That's why the Course insists so much on this. The cause of suffering is in the mind, not in the world. And that's good news. Because if it's in the mind, then it can be changed. If the pain were outside of us, we'd have no control. But if it's in what I believe, then I can choose again. For example, imagine you see someone on the street and they don't greet you. The ego mind says, "They're ignoring me. How rude. Did I do something wrong?" But if we apply the teachings of the Course, we can pause and ask, is what I'm thinking really true? Can I be absolutely sure they ignored me on purpose? What else could it mean? Maybe they didn't see me. Maybe they're just in their own world. Maybe they're having a rough day. And the most important question, who would I be without that thought? Probably someone lighter, freer, more at peace. That question, who would I be without that thought, is pure gold. It brings us straight into the present where peace already is. The Course also tells us, "I am willing to see things differently." That phrase is like magic. It's like opening an inner door. You don't have to know how to see things differently. You just have to be willing. The miracle takes care of the rest. And when I say miracle, I'm not talking about a unicorn appearing or the problem disappearing magically. I mean a shift in perception. The real miracle is to stop seeing through fear and begin to see through love. Let me share something personal. Years ago, someone spoke to me in a very hurtful way. For months, I kept repeating in my mind, "They shouldn't have done that. How could they? I didn't deserve that." And every time I thought about it, I suffered. Until one day I got tired, and I decided to question it. What if it did need to happen? What if that experience was there to show me something I needed to heal in myself? What if the problem wasn't their words, but my attachment to an expectation? In that moment, I understood what the Course says. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. What I truly am, my eternal self, my peace, my wholeness, wasn't damaged. Only my beliefs were shaken. And you know what? That was a gift. Because as long as we don't question our beliefs, we suffer over things that have no real power. Let's go to another example. Someone loses their job. The first thoughts that appear are, "This is terrible. How am I going to survive? This shouldn't be happening." But if we look at it through the lens of the Course, we can ask, how do I know this isn't exactly what I need right now? Maybe the soul wants something new. Maybe this loss is a divine redirection. And I won't see that as long as I'm holding on to the belief that this is bad. So what's the practice? When you feel discomfort, any kind of discomfort, don't rush to fix it on the outside. Sit with yourself, breathe, and ask, what am I believing right now that's making me feel this way? And then, is it true? Can I be absolutely sure? Who would I be without that thought? This is how we free the mind from the ego, the part that's always telling us stories of attack, lack, and guilt. The Course says, the ego makes illusions. The spirit undoes illusions. So your job is not to fight the illusion, but to stop feeding it, to question it with love, because there's no punishment for thinking wrongly, only an invitation to choose again. The ego will say, but this time I really am right. This really was serious. This really hurts. And you can lovingly respond, maybe so, but I choose my peace over being right. There's a beautiful line in the Course that says, do you prefer to be right or to be happy? That phrase has saved my life, because so often we choose to be right, and we suffer. But what if today you choose to be happy, even if the ego complains? Not because you're ignoring what you feel, but because you stop believing everything you think. Do you realize the power you have? You can observe your thoughts without following them. You can say, okay, thank you, thought, for showing up, but today I'm not going with you. That is healing. That is freedom. And that is a daily practice, because it's not about having positive thoughts all day long. It's about realizing you are not your thoughts. You are the one who observes, the one who chooses, the one who remembers. And that remembrance is true liberation. Today, I want to leave you with a practice you can carry with you. Every time something upsets you, stresses you, or frustrates you, pause and say out loud, I am willing to see this differently. It doesn't matter if you don't know how, just say it, and then watch how a small crack of light opens in your mind. That crack is the miracle. It's spirit saying, I'm with you. You're not alone, and this too shall pass. I'll close with this from the deepest place in my heart. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are not stuck. You are remembering. And even if it hurts sometimes, even if it feels slow, even if your mind screams, you're finding your way home. Every time you question a fearful thought, you welcome love in. And let's keep going. Because maybe right now you're thinking, okay, I get the idea of questioning my thoughts. But what about when the pain is so intense I can't even think clearly? And I get it. Because we've all been there. Moments when fear grips your chest, when tears don't ask for permission, when everything feels like it's falling apart and the mind screams that there's no way out. But this is exactly where the practice becomes more alive, more necessary, more sacred. Because even in those moments, even when it doesn't seem like it, there's still a choice. The Course reminds us, peace is a decision I make. It's not a feeling that depends on what happens outside, but an internal decision we can make even in the midst of chaos. So if you're going through something hard, you don't have to force yourself to feel good or repeat phrases that feel fake. You can simply pause and say, I don't know how to see this differently, but I'm willing. And that willingness is already a portal, already a prayer, already a beautiful surrender that opens the door to the miracle. Because what heals is not understanding everything or controlling everything. It's releasing the need to be right and allowing another vision to come through. Let me give you another example. A friend of mine recently lost her mother, and she told me, I can't stop thinking that I left things unsaid, that I didn't take care of her the way I should have. And that thought was destroying her because it felt so real. Until one day in conversation, I asked her, but what if that's not true? What if you took care of her the best way you could, with what you knew and who you were at the time? She went silent and cried, not from pain but from relief, because she realized her suffering came more from the judgment than from the loss itself. That is the power of questioning. It doesn't change the fact that someone died, but it does change the mental hell we create afterward. The Course says, there is no order of difficulty in miracles, which means that no matter if your pain is over something small or something that feels huge, the answer is the same. Observe what you're thinking and ask yourself if that thought comes from love or from fear. Because that's the only distinction that matters. And fear, no matter how loud it screams, is not the truth. Here's another everyday example. Imagine your partner doesn't text you all day, and your mind starts spinning. They don't care about me. They're probably with someone else. They're ignoring me. That mental movie can last hours, even days, and you suffer as if it were true, when maybe they're just busy, distracted, or needing space. But your mind doesn't wait for proof. It reacts instantly to the thought as if it were fact. That's why it's so important to pause and say, this is just a thought, not a truth. And in doing that, you take your power back. Because the ego wants you to react, but spirit invites you to observe. Not to deny it, but to see it in a new light. It's not about covering up the thought with forced positivity, but exposing it with honesty and asking yourself, does this bring me closer to God or take me further away? And that's not a theological question, it's a practical one. If what you're thinking fills you with tension, anxiety, attack, then it's not from God, it's not from love, and therefore, it's not true. Even if you've thought it 1,000 times. It's intense, I know, but it's also freeing, because it means you can step out of the cycle at any moment. You don't need the other person to change. You don't need the past to be rewritten. You don't need everything to line up perfectly. You only need to be willing to see with different eyes. That's what the Course calls a miracle, and it's always available every time you pause and say, I don't know what this means, but I'm willing to release my interpretation. And suddenly, something inside you softens, because you're no longer fighting life, or the emotion, or yourself. You're simply seeing with a mind that's more open, more gentle, more willing. And that's where the Holy Spirit comes in. That wise and loving part of you that does know what to do, that does see the purpose, that does remember who you really are. And this, my love, becomes a moment-by-moment practice. When someone interrupts you, when things don't go as planned, when the body hurts, when you compare yourself, when you feel guilty. All of these are opportunities to pause and remember. I am the dreamer of the dream, not the trapped character, and I can choose another dream. So, why not choose now? Don't wait for life to calm down to practice peace. Practice peace, and watch your life begin to shift. Not because everything outside falls into place, but because you stop believing that it needs to in order for you to be okay. Your peace doesn't depend on the world. It is your inheritance. It is your birthright. And it is right here, just behind the next thought you are willing to release. And maybe now you're wondering, what if I'm wrong? What if I question a thought and it turns out to be true? That's also part of the ego's fear. It wants the last word. It's afraid to let go of control because it believes that if it's not in charge, everything will fall apart. But the Course reminds us of something fundamental. The ego always speaks first. It is loud, it is insistent, but it is not true. In contrast, the voice of spirit is gentle, patient. It doesn't interrupt. It only speaks when the mind is willing to listen. So it's okay if you make mistakes along the way. If one day you fall back into a thought of attack. If you forget to question, because this isn't a test, it's a training. And every thought you observe without judgment, every moment you pause and turn inward instead of reacting outward, you strengthen your connection to peace. You don't need to do it perfectly. You just need to do it honestly, with humility, with love. For example, if you're in an argument and suddenly realize you're defending your point with anger, you can stop, breathe, and ask yourself, what am I really defending? My peace or my ego? And in that moment, you can choose again. Maybe you can't change the whole situation right then, but you can step out of the mental prison of judgment. The Course says, I have invented the world I see. That might sound harsh at first, but it's actually a gift, because it means that if I invented it, I can stop maintaining it. I can choose to stop projecting my wounds and fears and begin to see innocence where I once saw guilt. and that is freedom, to see innocence in myself and in others. So how do we practice this in everyday life? With small, conscious pauses. When someone speaks to you harshly, when you look in the mirror and don't like what you see, when you feel like you're not doing enough. Instead of continuing on autopilot, stop and ask, what am I believing right now? Does this connect me to love or to fear? That's your compass. And you don't need to have all the answers. You just need to remember that any thought that makes you suffer cannot come from God. Period. If it makes you feel guilty, small, anxious, or unworthy, it's not the voice of your truth. It's just an old echo of the ego. And you can let it pass. Like a cloud, like a noise you no longer need to listen to. Because beyond all that noise, there is something in you that is already at peace. That already knows. That is already free. And that's what you came here for. Not to learn something new, but to remember what you already are. To stop defending thoughts that steal your joy. To stop bargaining with ideas that don't deserve you. To choose again. And we're in this together. We're all learning to look again. To love without fear. To forgive, not because others deserve it, but because we deserve peace. And that is the most beautiful thing about the spiritual path. There's no punishment, no guilt, no rush, just gentle invitations to come home. So today, when this talk ends, you don't need to change your whole life. Just do one thing. Observe your thoughts like passing clouds. And remember, you are not that. You are the sky, the space, the love that observes. And from that space, healing begins. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your open heart, your willingness, your courage. Because yes, it takes courage to look within, to question what you always thought was true, to let go of the ego stories and choose the truth of love. But you are not alone. You never were. And every time you choose peace over judgment, the entire world benefits. Because your awakening is not just for you, it's a gift to everyone. So keep going, step by step, thought by thought, moment by moment. It doesn't matter if you forget sometimes. What matters is that now you know you can always come back. You can always choose again. I embrace you from that place where we are all one, and I leave you with this reminder. You're not here to survive. You're here to remember that you are already free, that you are already loved, that you are already everything you've been searching for. And from that place, all that's left is to share it. See you soon, and thank you for remembering with me.